How can we forgive? Remembering all we've been forgiven, and remembering who has done that forgiving is the secret to making that first move into active, life-affirming forgiveness, no matter what the hurt. There's a book by Lewis Smedes entitled Forgive and Forget. And he says some very basic things about forgiveness. I was perusing the book, and I thought I want to just make three things that he said are final subpoints of this morning's message, because they were so poignant. I just thought Smedes wrote this out so much more eloquently than I could ever speak. I just want to say some of what he said. There are three stages you must go through when it comes to forgiveness: recognition, surgery, starting over. Recognition, surgery, starting over. Firstly, recognition. You got to recognize that something has happened to you that really deserves forgiveness. Here's the deal. Not everything that ever happens to you is something that you need to forgive someone for. You might say, well, wait a second, aren't I supposed to forgive people for everything? Well, hold on, think about it. I think sometimes we cheapen forgiveness by forgiving things that don't rise to the level of needing forgiveness. Back to the example of somebody cutting you off on Main Street in Farmington, or that annoying spot right where you have to turn where McDonald's is, and there aren't 2 lanes there, and there should be 2 lanes there, and I don't get it. People are, you know that spot? And there's always an angry driver at that little intersection there. Well, if I was ever on city council in Farmington, that's the one thing I would run on. And no, I'm not running for city council. Let me make that super clear. All right. But we might have somebody from city council in here today, but anyway. Not everything requires forgiveness. If somebody cuts you off on the road, you just kind of move on with your life. Here's something that's happened in our culture. The fact that everybody gets a trophy when they play in a sport in Little League. I know I'm stepping on some toes here. I might upset some people. It's made our culture soft. Some of us need to have thicker skin. My job as a pastor is to have the heart of Jesus and the height of a rhinoceros. Okay? And we all need tougher skin at times. Have you ever had the experience of someone coming to ask you to forgive them for something and you didn't even know that you had hurt them? There are some minor matters that you ought to have the grace and grit to just forget. And there's a recognition there that there are legitimate things for which you need to forgive somebody or for which you need to be forgiven, but there are other things that are just kind of accidents in life or minor things in life. You just got to move past them. So what then does need forgiving? I think there are 2 big things that we can point out. And I learned this from Smedes' book. Those 2 things especially are betrayal and loyalty. Betrayal and loyalty, or more specifically disloyalty, I should say. Betrayal and disloyalty. These are 2 wounds that need to be recognized and confronted. And examples of this are if one married person betrays the faithfulness of their spouse, that's betrayal and disloyalty. There's a business partner who promises a friend a loan and then reneges because he can make more money by loaning it to another. That's disloyalty. A coworker who recommends a friend to the boss for promotion until he finds out the friend is out of favor with the boss and hurriedly withdraws the recommendation, that's disloyalty. I think there are situations where, especially with betrayal and disloyalty, we need to deal with forgiveness in those areas. But disloyalty and betrayal are the 2 primary experiences worthy of forgiveness and worthy of recognition. So there is the issue of, when it comes to applying this to our lives, of recognizing what is worthy of even dealing with, having a confrontational conversation. Secondly, there's surgery. That's subpoint B, surgery. And I think you understand where I'm going with this. After recognizing these situations, there needs to be a time where you simply cut away from the person the disloyalty or betrayal that they've done to you. Just cut that out. Hard to do, right? Hello. Is that hard to do? Hard to do. You disengage the person from the act. And when you get right down to what forgiveness is, it's the very step that's done through the grace of God. Is this hitting home to anybody, or is it just me? Am I just preaching to myself today? Because I'm telling you, I sat in that chair in my study and I wrestled with this message. Not that I don't wrestle with every message, but there are some that are more personal. This was a personal one. Then lastly, starting over. The third stage of forgiveness is starting over. I want you to imagine this. Imagine you've been estranged from your daughter for years. And you're the one who caused the estrangement. You said, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I cut you off, that kind of thing. And after studying Matthew 18:21 through 35 and this parable of Jesus, you go up to that daughter and you say, I want to start over. I want you to be my daughter again. I want us to move past this. I forgive you for how you've hurt me. I hope you'll forgive me for how I've hurt you. List out some ways that you've hurt them. Start over. That is a hard thing to do, is to start over in a relationship. That's why Jesus tells us this parable, to show it's an act of grace to clear up the situation and to clear junk out of your life of unforgiveness. Now this parable, I'm going to close with this. This parable has a sobering final act. In this final act, fellow servants saw the whole incident between the forgiven man and his fellow servant. Someone's always watching what we do. If these fellow servants had truly been merciful, they would have paid the fellow servant's debt. But instead, they ran and told the king what they saw. And they said, hey, king, do you remember that guy that owed you like 60 bazillion years worth of money? And you forgave him all that debt? You know what he did right after you forgave him all the debt? He just went out and he pursued somebody's little debt that they owed to him. And for the first time in the story, the king is angry. When he was betrayed, he wasn't angry, but when he found out that the one whom he had forgiven had refused to forgive, then he became very angry indeed. And what follows is the divine must, the moral of the story. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant just as I had mercy on you? Is what he's saying. The king, in essence, asks that question. The should is actually a must, and is the same word in the Greek New Testament that Jesus uses when he said 3 times, the Son of Man must go to the cross. And it's that divine imperative which is part of the whole salvation experience. If we know grace, we've got to forgive. That might be the main thing you need to take away from this message. If you know grace, you've got to forgive. Forgiving is so treacherously hard, but when we cannot forgive, we are actually disgracing the grace that we have experienced. God is so gracious to you and me. How can we forgive? Remembering all we've been forgiven And remembering who has done that forgiving is the secret to making that first move into active, life-affirming forgiveness, no matter what the hurt.